Hola. Y good evening. So let's do something really, really, really exciting. And that is, let's learn about the flight route. In particular, let's learn about departures and arrivals, including approaches. Very important topics, subjects to know, especially if you are interested in fully immersing yourself in, I don't know, flight simulation and you're flying the big jets, 737, 747, A320, whatever it is. So I have in front of me a flight plan. I generated this in SIMBRIEF, so we're not going to learn how to use SIMBRIEF. That's something that you can do on your own. You can figure that out. In addition, we're going to be looking at the charts inside or within NAVIGRAPH, another software that you can figure out yourself. I'm only showing you about the route, what is in the route, and how to translate that in the charts. So let's take a look at this. I will explain this just a little bit. In SIMBRIEF, so you come down here, and this is a lot of information that is actually used to program the MCDU. But again, we're not learning how to do that. We're learning about the route. So if we scroll down, this is the routing right here. And this is the full route. And this is the route. I say that's the route because ultimately, at your arrival destination, you're expecting a certain runway that you're going to land. And even though in the route here it says KPHX 8, it doesn't mean that you're going to get runway 8. The wind might change, and runway assignments are based on the wind direction. So do your best to find out which way the wind is blowing, and then pick the opposite runway that is going into the wind. And that's where you want to initially pick your runway in SIMBRIEF. Again, excuse me. If you're using VATSIM and you choose runway 8, by golly, they might change you over to runway 26, which is the opposite direction, the opposite runway. And that will change your approach. It will also change your arrival a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. But again, we're not here to learn about that. We're here to learn about this little segment of the route. And I'm just going to be general about this, that most of the time you will have a departure, and most of the time you will have an arrival. And that will apply to your major airports. Now, if you're flying into a small doodad, then you may not have an arrival. You may just have to be doing some visual stuff. So, in this route, we are going from LAX over to Phoenix. Airliners have to fly certain paths, or they have to fly from one point to another. They don't just get up in the air and fly around nilly-willy, freely-willy. They just don't do that. So flight plans include departures, which is what this is right here, dots 2, as well as arrivals. Here's the arrival, heighter 1. So the way this is read is you have a departure, then you have a transition. And then you might be flying along, you might have a whole bunch of other waypoints, places to go to, but ultimately at your destination airport, you'll have an arrival with its own transition. Now, the way it's stated is the departure and the transition, the arrival and its transition. So let's take a look at the departure dots 2. So for that, I'm using NAVIGRAPH. Now this looks overwhelming if this is the first time you've seen this, but don't let it overwhelm you. Here's the same, this is the same route. Spread out a little bit differently, but it's the same route. Here's the dots 2. The little triangle, that's going to be your transition. And then direct to BLH, this is also the transition to the heighter 1. And we'll talk about the arrival in a moment. Here we are. These are the Los Angeles charts and everything. You have stars, which are, I think that stands for standard arrival. And then these are SIDS, or standard instrument departure, I think. I don't know the acronym. I call them SID, star. Star, these are arrivals. You notice here over here, heighter 1, that's green. Now, again, if you're doing it differently, then you may not have green, but this is a star. And these are pathways, predetermined pathways to get to Los Angeles Airport. If we look at Phoenix, the same thing applies for Phoenix. Phoenix has a set of stars, standard arrivals or arrivals, and they also have a set of departures. So depending on where you are going, that will determine which departure you're going to be taking. So if you are shooting off here to the west, then you probably wouldn't be flying a departure that shoots you off to the east or the north or the south. So the different departures apply to which direction you ultimately are going. Now in NAVIGRAPH we can see this pink line. The pink, again, nice thing about NAVIGRAPH is it corresponds to the departure. So let's go back to Los Angeles. And we are taking the dots 2 departure. Now let's take a look at dots 2 departure. Where are you at? Here it is, right here. Okay, so it's down here. So let's go ahead and open that up and take a look at it. Looks very confusing. So this is a departure. And let me explain this just a little bit. Zoom in as best I can. Here's the airport, and here are the runways lined out. And the runways are, look over here, you have 24 left, 24 right, 25 left, and 25 right. In order to better illustrate the runways, let's pull up the oh yeah, taxi here. Let's pull up the airport diagram. So let's just pull that up. So here's 24 right. Here's 24 left. Then over here is 25 right, 25 left. That essentially is the direction the runway is facing. So we usually park, like when I fly or whatever, flight simulator, not for real. I'm not a real pilot, folks. I usually park right here because Terminal 4 is the American Airlines terminal. And I believe Southwest is over here, Terminal 1. So Southwest usually will depart runway 24 left, and of course, because we're on this side of the airport, usually 25 right. And then the outer runways are used for landing. Okay, anyway, let's go back to our departure. So let's say in that flight plan that we were looking at, it says here, and see, even this is wrong. It says 24 left, but it's okay. 24 left. 24 left is way over here on this side. So, or actually, it's this 1 second runway right here. 24 left. All of the runways are heading in the 251 degree. So they're all facing the same direction. They just have different runway headings or numbers. Anyway, 24 left. Now if we come over here, 24 left is right here, and there are instructions that we are not going to really get into. But there are instructions on the initial climb when you take off, as well as general routing instructions. So first thing you want to do when you look at a departure is what kind of what do I have to do if I'm taking off from runway 24 left. So first of all, they're saying climb heading 251 to an altitude of 640 feet, then climb direct to cross Del Rey. All right, at or below 3,000. Then stay on track 256 degrees to cross any at or below 5,000. Then on to the depicted route to cross dots at or above 15,000. Now, once you cross dots, now where is dots at? Where are you at? Dots is down here. So all of that to get from here to here. And if you look at it, you're going to take off. You need to be at or above 640, and that's what these little lines here mean. At the very beginning, boy, this was confusing. I couldn't figure it out. But the way I think about it is this. The number is above the line. See the line? So you need to be at or above 640 feet at this point right here. So you may have to do a little bit of climbing, right? Once you get to Del Rey, they want you, the departure says you need to be at or below, because the number is below the line. They want you at or below 3,000. So you have to keep an eye on that. And then you're flying along and you hit any. Here's any, right? And even in the instructions over here, it said to cross any at or below 5,000. Well, look, here's the restriction. So these, by the way, are called restrictions. At or below 5,000. You're coming out, you're swinging out, right? Do. And then from here, they want you to be, on the depicted route. This is the depicted route right here. So you're flying along, right? Flying along. PV. Now, sometimes when you depart, you may be instructed to turn direct PV. And all that means is that no matter where you are along the route, you are to go straight to PV. And sometimes that is to help, to give you a shortcut. Sometimes, not all the time. I've had it happen maybe once or twice. Let's see. Okay. All right. So you're flying along, come here, and you hit dots. And from dots on, so back up here, 24 left, cross dots at or above 15,000. Okay. And then from dots, that's the transition. No, the transition is right here, scenery, because if we look at the route, let's close this. This is the transition. Okay, that's the transition. So if we go back to the departure is saying, then on depicted route to cross dots at or above 15,000. And here is dots, 15,000. Okay. Now, from dots on the transition, you're going to maintain 17,000, and then you're going to expect the filed altitude 5 minutes after departure. Well, what is the filed altitude? So you need to know that as well. So let's see. The filed altitude is right here. Okay. 35,000. So you would expect 35,000 from air traffic control 5 minutes after departure. Once you get those instructions, then you would climb to 35,000 feet. But let me explain the departure in a little bit easier here. So the departure is just a predefined path. It's a predefined pathway to get you on to where you're going to. So we're heading to Phoenix, so naturally we're going to come out over the ocean, make a left, and then swing on over land. And you'll notice that we have two different points of transition. We have what they call it scenery, but these are supposed to be movie stars. So I don't know, but anyway, I call this one Connery, but you'll hear it scenery. So you have a scenery transition, and you could also have a CLE departure. In our flight plan, we have, I believe, Connery or scenery. Okay, so we take the dots to departure, runway 24 left, the dots to departure, transition, scenery. And all that is we're 24 left, so we're over here, flying along, boom, 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 all the way down here, do. There's the dots thing, and then we're going to transition with scenery right here. So we would come down, across, up, and then on to the rest of our flight. If we take a look at some of these other departures. For example, let's take a look at, let's see what this one, Chatty 5 departure. Let's see what that one looks like. Okay, so Chatty 5, so here are the runways, and you can see that Chatty 5 really isn't applicable for a trip to Arizona because this shoots us out and heads us north. Now, let's see if this is, let me see here. I'm looking. Okay. By the way, on RNAV departures, usually you are instructed, to do your altitude and stuff. Actually, you're instructed anyway, so disregard that. What I was looking for on this one, because it looks like a very dry, like what do you do out here? So I'm thinking, let's see, this SID requires minimum take, okay. Oh, bingo. Okay, here's a perfect example. So when you look at your departure, you need to determine if your departure is vectored. All right, and what that means is that when you are cleared for takeoff, the air traffic controller may or may not tell you to fly the runway heading. On this particular departure, you would fly the heading. Climb heading. Wait a minute. Let's see. Oh, I get. This is different. This is if you are taking off going west. That's what this is. Because I just noticed, 6 left and 6 left and right, and 7 left and right. So sometimes the winds may be blowing in a different direction, which requires you to now take off in the opposite direction. So instead of over the water, you're going to be taking off towards land. That's happened a couple times, but it's not very often. In any event, you would fly, and this is why you have to look at your departure, because your initial climb, look at this, climb heading 041, and then this one is climb heading 071. So, anywho's, and you can see down here, as soon as you take off, right, if you're taking off 6 left or 6 right, you are to shoot off to the left at 041 and maintain that heading. And then, of course, if you are taking off on 7 left or 7 right, then you would fly runway heading 071. And you would fly that heading until you are instructed by ATC to turn towards your filed route. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at your departures. You need to identify whether or not your departure is vectored. And here it's vector because it says for vector to V23. And all vector means is instructions. Another word for instructions from air traffic control. And then once you get your instructions to get to your the route, like your first waypoint, then you're pretty much on your regular flight plan. But from V23, then on transition or assigned route, expect filed altitude 5 minutes after departure. So Let's get back to dots 2. Take a look at this again. So this is a simple one. This one is not vectored. It isn't vectored. I don't think anything's vectored in here. It isn't. So here you would just take off and follow the SID. And quite often, the air traffic controller will tell you in your instructions when you file for IFR clearance, they will tell you to climb via the SID except maintain 5,000. Expect 35,000 or whatever, 5 minutes after departure or 10 minutes, which is why it's very important for you when you are cleared to depart. It's very important for you to start the stopwatch or start the clock, because if 6 or 7 minutes rolls by and you're still flying at 5,000 feet, you might want to contact air traffic control and let them know, hey, American 88 expecting 35,000 feet, 5 minutes after departure, we're on 7 minutes. Do you have a status or whatever it is? But say something. Don't just fly your plane and don't say nothing. Okay, so that is the departure. It's just a predefined set of waypoints to keep you out of the way of other air traffic and to get you to where you're going to the most efficient and easiest route possible. These are restrictions. Again, when the number is below the line, that means they want you at, so the at is the line, at or below 3,000, and here they want you at or 5,000. And but this one is at or above. And then, of course, from there, hopefully by then you will have received your final filed altitude. Okay. Now, in this flight plan, we are taking the dots 2, scenery, transition. So we know we're going to be heading here. Boop. Okay, over to scenery. Now, what does our flight plan look from scenery? Now it says direct to BLH, which I think is Blythe. It says direct VOR, but let's take a look at the Hyder 1 arrival. So let's go over here to Phoenix. I have it down here. Here we go. Okay. So take a look at, this is the Hyder 1. Here we go up at the top. Hyder 1 RNAV arrival. Now I'm not going to explain RNAV because I don't really understand it a whole lot. So I'm still learning that, but anywho's. So you're flying along, and let's show you the route here. All of this pink is the dots 2 departure. Coming along, and I think somewhere around here is yeah, somewhere around here is the dots VOR or waypoint, and you're flying along, and then you swing up to hit Connery. There's Connery right there. Boom. Once you hit Connery or scenery, you're now off of the departure. Now they've gotten you to where they want you to go. The flight plan, after you hit scenery, now you're going to go direct. So in other words, a straight line, no turning or nothing, to BLH. And here is BLH. And now all of a sudden, you're on the arrival, the Hyder 1 arrival. There you go, right? So let's take a look at the Hyder 1 arrival. So Hyder 1 arrival. Okay. The Hyder 1 arrival, by the way, here's Hyder right here. This is a waypoint. And then it continues to go so forth. Continues to go on its way. And this is where it's gonna be different. Let me just finish explaining this here. So here is BLH right here, the VOR BLH. And so you are flying direct, so a straight line to BLH. From BLH, you have all these little waypoints: Skull, Spank, Sonara, Swoon, and then you're going to hit Hyder, then you're going to hit Gila. Now here is where things start getting weird, because you can either split off to the left, or you could keep on going straight, or sort of splitting off to the right to go over here. And the reason why it's doing this is because this particular arrival gives you waypoints if you plan on landing runway 8 or any of these other runways that are here. Our flight plan says that we plan on landing on runway 8. So in that case, when we enter the flight plan into the MCDU, or your flight computer, it's going to shoot us off over to the left, because one thing that the flight computer does is, the first thing it asks is, well, what runway are you planning on landing at? So if we were to put runway 8, and then we would choose the arrival, then we would pick Hyder 1 out of the arrival. It would not make sense for the flight computer to shoot you off over here going this way if you were planning on landing on runway 8. So by design, it would shoot you off to the left and get you prepared for the approach for runway 8. For Hyder 1, for this arrival, you could have come in from Salem, BLH, or Hogs down here. So again, it depends on where you are coming from. If you're coming from the south, then most likely you would be hitting Hogs. It would not make sense for you to fly all the way up here to hit Salem just to come back down. So again, it's all about efficiency. Now once you figure out, in your flight plan, the flight plan says BLH, then Hyder 1. Oh no, BLH on the Hyder 1 arrival for runway 8. So let's say you had that planned in your flight plan, and if you had that planned and you've been flying for an hour or 2 hours, and you plan on hitting BLH, boom, you plan on coming in, and you plan on shooting up, and then preparing for runway 8, you would put that into your flight computer. Well, that is good as long as you're going, that you're going to land runway 8. But let's say the wind changes. And air traffic control comes back and says, expect either visual approach or ILS approach, runway 26. Well, now that's a little different. Now that's different. You would have to go into your flight computer and change your arrival. This time you would choose runway 26, and you would choose Heighter 1 with the BLH transition, and the flight computer will now change it from this, like going up here, to going straight across, because this is the thing. You got to come across because 26 is landing this way, so they want you over here. You pass Limo, and now you notice there's no lines or anything to get you into 26. This is where you would be vectored. Again, given instructions on when to turn left to line up for runway 26. So I know that once I hit this, I would end up just going straight. Just stay at this direction. Plus, that's what the flight computer is going to do. Now, how do you get lined up with the runway? Well, originally, this is an approach. Okay, here's the runway right here. And these are just approaches. Now, you can either get to this approach from here, from Alice, which is up here, a little bit on the, what's that, north? I don't know what that is. Or, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, north. From that direction, or I like, or ill-like, or whatever you want to call it. So when you are entering in your which runway, which arrival, and which arrival transition, you also pick the approach via. And for runway 8, there are 2 approach vias. Actually, there are 3. One of them is Alice, which is over here, and the other one is I like. And I may be saying that wrong, but and the other one I think is just, runway final, which means just, not this and not that. You just come in, make your turn whenever you're instructed, and just get in there and line up. So that's this approach. And but this is runway 8. We were just given runway 26. So if we pick up runway 26 ILS, we'll just call it ILS. Put that at the bottom and then bring it up. So we were out here. Remember, Limo was out here, and we were going to just, go straight. Remember, we were just going to say go straight until we were instructed to turn left. At some point, air traffic control will tell us to turn left at, whatever degree, and get us set up to get lined up with runway 26. If you are doing ILS and you have everything tuned up, then you'll see the glide slopes and everything, and that's how you would visually see in your instruments the plane lining up. And then when it's lined up, you can push the localizer button or the approach button to have the plane keep you lined up with the runway. But even if you're not using that, you just need to know by the approach, when you reach toter, you need to be at 5,000 feet. When you reach Jagall, you need to be at 4,000. And when you reach Prune, you need to be at 3,000. So you have to really, on the visual approach, you just have to pay attention to your altitude, because you don't want to get too close to the runway and be too high to where you're doing nosedives. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Anyway, so that kind of gives an overall illustration of departures and arrivals. Now I'm going to pause the sim, and we're going to go into Flight Simulator, into the A320, and we'll show you how to actually program this. So stay put. Don't go nowhere. Almost there. Loading up.
FS Realistic.
Oh, I thank you. Ooh, there's some new activities. None of these I ever use. Anywho's, be right back. Okay, I did decide to change the flight plan. I mean, it's same arrivals and departures, but just wanted to put the correct runways, because we're going to program, and this is typically the runway that I land on. But again, depends on the wind, but we're just going to assume that that's going to be the runway, just to make things easier when we program it into Flight Simulator. Alright, we are ready to fly. Now the only thing I'm going to do, I'm only going to show you how to put the flight plan in regards to the departures and the arrivals, because they have to be read a certain way in order for you to really understand what it is that you're choosing, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can do this. We'll put all we need is electricity here. Alright, that should be good enough. Go down to the MCDU, and everything should start waking up here. Okay. Now, of course, there are different ways of putting in your flight plan. One way is importing it from SIMBRIEF, and the other way is to do it like real pilots do, and that is to enter it in. So we're going to enter it in manually, because I want you to see how this is done. First, what we'll do while we're here, might as well, is turn these things on. I don't know if I'm going to need them or not, but we'll do it anyway. Okay, back down here. Okay. So, Flight Management Guru Computer. Flight Management Guidance Computer, I guess that's what that means. So, here we go. Oh, okay, that's okay. That's alright. I'm clearing all this out. So, take a look at that. Not much you can do with it. But what you can see, if it says September, especially in the Phoenix, if it says like September 21, you need to upgrade your flight nav database. I'm not going to explain that, but you really should do that. Alright. So the first thing we do is there's an acronym. And let me see if I can do this right. Let me see if I can do that. It's DIFSRIP. And that corresponds to these buttons right here. So D is for data. Now this is your data. Yeah, just look at it. There you go. Look at it. Just look at it. Will you look at it? Okay, look at it. Just look at that. Okay. Then you have I for init. Now init has two inits. There's an init A and there's an init B. Guess which one you're going to do first? That's right. Not init B, but init A. So in the acronym DIFSRIP, D-I, that first I is init A, F is for the flight plan, S is for the secondary flight plan, R is for the radio or the rad nav, and then we have another I. That corresponds to init B. And you don't do init B until the plane is fully loaded with all of your passengers, fuel, and any cargo that you may have. And then of course the P is for performance. That's where you put in your speed. So I talked a little bit too much there. So here we are on the init page. And so you're going to put in from to. We're going from K, L, X slash K, P, H, X. Boom. Very good. Now, let's not get into too much of this. All I'm doing is getting to the point to where we can get to the flight plan to put in the flight plan. But I will put in the flight number. I always put AAL, American Airlines, 88. Okay, put that in there. The cost index, if you look on the flight plan, at the very, very top, right here, there is CI. Well, guess what that stands for? Cost index. So that's 22. So we're going to put in 22. Cruise altitude, what do we say? There it is right there. 35. So you're just going to put in 350. Okay? 350. Again, I'm just putting it in there. There's other stuff to do with this and this over here. Don't worry about it. At least not for this purpose. We're just getting into the flight plan. Now we're ready for the flight plan. So we come over here and there's nothing in here, right? Except for your origin, where you're departing from and where you're going to, KPHX. So here's what we do. If we look at the flight plan, where are you at? Here we are. Oops. The flight plan says that we are departing runway 25 right. Okay, so that we know. Alright, so you click on KLAX and you're going to set up your departure. Oh, imagine that. Here are the runways. We need runway 25 right. So you scroll up, there's 25 right. Boom. Now, if we go back to the flight plan, let's see if I could shrink this up a little bit so we can see it. Hold on, because I want us to see. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So we just chose 25 right, and you read from left to right for your departure. I'm sorry, from right, from left to right, all the way to your transition. Right? Okay. 25 right, we chose that. There it is up there. Dots to departure. So here are your SIDS. Again, departure is a standard instrument departure. So SID. We want dots to. And when you choose dots to, now it's saying, oh, there are, at least for this departure, 2 available transitions. Which one are you planning on taking? Well, let's take a look. We are planning on taking scenery. So you would choose scenery, and that's it for the departure. And the way you read this is you are departing from runway 25 right via the dots to departure, scenery, transition. And that's what you'll be given by your air traffic control. They will say something like, American 88, you are cleared, IFR Phoenix, via the dots to departure, scenery, transition. Climb, maintain, or climb via the SID, except maintain 5,000 feet, expect 35,000 feet, 10 minutes after departure. And then you would read that back to them. And then they would say, and then as filed. And all that means is then, once you hit the scenery, you're essentially on your own. You still have a flight plan that you have to follow. But that's what they're telling you. All right. So once you have your departure in, your runway, the departure, and the transition, you would insert that into your flight plan. Now all of a sudden, you have all these little waypoints that show up. And if we go back to NAVIGRAPH, you'll see all of these little waypoints. So this is why a departure is important, because it's a predetermined set of waypoints that the flight computer is going to provide to you and have the plane follow, or at least give you a reference point of following. And actually, you do need to follow it, otherwise they come back and say, what's the reason you're off course, state your intention. So you don't want to get into that mess. So far, if you look at the flight plan, we're going up here, boom, boom, boom. Remember, we talked about PV, and I said, hey, sometimes they have you go fly direct PV. Flying along, there's dots, and then from the dots, we're going to go wild, waypoint, blocked, waypoint, castaway, and then scenery. And if you hear in the Phoenix, it tells you, hey, there's your transition right there. All right, so if you keep going up, now all of a sudden, okay, that's good, but how do we get to Phoenix, okay, after we hit scenery or Connery? So now we set up the arrival. Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing, but if you go back to the flight plan says you go backwards. So you're going to get to runway 26 via the Hyder 1 arrival, and then the BLH transition. So you're going to be flying along. Once you hit scenery, you're going to go direct to BLH. Well, BLH happens to be one of the transitions on the Hyder 1 arrival. So let's do that. Come back here. We go to click on KPHX. We set up the arrival. And we decided we were going to land ILS 26. So you choose the runway first. And now we need to choose the arrival. Now don't get confused by BLH5 versus Hyder 1. BLH5 is a different arrival. We need Hyder 1. So you scroll until you find Hyder 1. There it is. So we're going to get to ILS 26 via Hyder 1 arrival with the BLH transition. There you go. Now, the way I read this, I'm flying along, I hit scenery, the flight plan says to go direct to BLH, and then from there I'm on the Hyder 1 arrival. So in the flight plan, you see here BLH, so you're flying along, you're going to hit BLH. That's going to take you to or put you onto the Hider 1 arrival. Because you are going to ILS 26, the waypoints are going to be different than if you were landing on ILS 8, because you could still land on ILS 8 through the BLH transition and getting onto the Hider 1, but you're going to have a different set of waypoints. So we are going to land at ILS 26, and the way we're going to get there is through BLH on the Hider 1, which is going to give us a predetermined set of waypoints. Now here is the magic right here. This says VIA. The VIA is based on the approach that you are going to use for ILS 26. Now this is a little tricky, and so before we do that, let's see what our options are. So if we click on VIAs, what are the options? So the only option we have is Zerlo. Now if we go look at the approach, where is Zerlo at? Zerlo happens to be way up here. So, you know, I don't think so. Because remember, we're coming in on this side down over here. It would make absolutely no sense to come over here and then fly all the way up here, come all the way around, hit Zerlo, and then come all the way down. Doesn't make sense to do that. What does make sense is that we would just be flying along and we would wait for instructions to cut across and then get in line. Either hit Seirun or Zemos or Totters. So let's just take a look and see. So, but we're not going to use Zerlo. Okay, so I will take this. Now, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so no VIA. None. Okay. So let's go ahead and insert, and let's see what this is doing. So if we scroll, let's go to the, let's just scroll through. So we're going along. There's Dots, Wild Castaway. There's Connery. Now, here we have what's called a flight plan discontinuity. Our flight plan says to go from Connery to BLH, so there should not be any flight plan discontinuities. You could delete that. So clear, gotta press clear until you get clear in the window, and then just click on the flight plan discontinuity and it goes away, and then just click on insert the change. So now we're going from Connery to BLH to Skoll to Spink, right? To Sonara, Swoon, Hider, Gila. Now after Gila is like the main point in this arrival. So let's take a look at the arrival. Because look, here's Gila right here. And then all of a sudden it splits off in two different directions. Pretty much straight ahead or kind of up, you know, up over here to line up with, you know, the runway 8 and those runways. So I'm expecting the next waypoint to be Agla, Chavo, and then Limo. So we come back here, let's take a look. There it is, Agla, Chavo, Limo. Now let's see what's happening. Okay. Now this is what happens quite often, and that is you're flying manually. Because if you try to get rid of this flight plan discontinuity, it's probably going to say not allowed. Yeah, not allowed, because it's a legitimate, it's a legitimate, you know, break in the flight plan. And ideally, air traffic control would be online. And once you hit LEMO, they would vector you in. Remember, vector means to give instructions. They would vector you in to get in line with runway 26. So once you hit LEMO, you just have to wait. Now, if there's no air traffic control, then you have to decide at what point you're going to go direct to one of these waypoints so that you can get lined up. Then again, you've got these little restrictions here. That's another video. So anyway, keep going down here, and you've only got these 2 waypoints, and then of course you've got Phoenix 26. Now, if we look at the approach, where are these 2 waypoints in relationship to the runway? So what were they? Jaggle and Prune. Well, here they are right here. So here's Jaggle, or Jagal, and here's Prune. Yes, so doesn't give you much room, but what you do is you would just fly out, right? And then maybe when you're over near this waypoint, or even this one, Zemos, or even Totter, then you would go direct, and you could just say go direct to Totter and just add a waypoint into your flight plan once you get to that point. And so that is that's that. Now, if you wanted to take a look at what the flight plan actually looks like, then you could come up to here. Let's see if we can do this. See if I can do it right. Oh, pilot, I think. Let's zoom out, go down, and get close enough. So if you want to see your flight plan on here to see what it looks like, you would go up here and turn that to plan. And the other thing you would do is come down here and go to the beginning of your flight plan, which is just by clicking on flight plan. And here is the beginning of your flight plan. And then you just scroll through each. So right now you're at 640, and I think if you do this, yeah, there's the 640, and it's whatever's at the top is what is centered. You go next, I think. Docker. Yeah, I think that's where the plane is. Anyway, you just click through it and just see if there's anything weird. So far, so good. There's Wild, Block, Castaway. And we're going to come up to the transition. There's a transition with the triangle. Now that, I've only seen that in the Phoenix, so it may not show it in the fly-by-wire, I don't know. But now from here we go direct to BLH, right? And then Skull, Spank, Sonara, Swoon, Hider. They're all waypoints. There's Gila. And then from here, sort of go straight. There we go. There's Chavo. And then Limo. And you'll notice the little triangle. So Limo is the like the end, or the transition of that arrival. So keep going. Keep going. Now we're manual. Now what I want to show is this. Let's put this out if it whoops. Okay. Let's just draw it. So here's the airport right here. And I'm zoomed out about 80 miles so that we can see. And you see this line right here. It just keeps going straight, straight, straight. If you have air traffic controller, the air traffic controller is going to give you vectors to land. That's just what they're going to do. If you don't have a air traffic control, then you have to make the decision of when to cut across and get in line with the runway. Okay, so that pretty much, yeah, so there's the 2 waypoints on the approach. If you wanted, you could add, when you get to, once you pass Limo and you get far enough and you get past Jaggle or Jagal, maybe you want to do a direct, so you would come down here to your MCDU and you would do direct, and then you would put in Todder, T-O-D-R-E, and put that up here. And then when you're ready, just kind of get that ready, and when you get to the point to where you have some space to get to Todder, then you do insert. And once it inserts, it will then just stay right on path. And once you hit Todder, then it will go to Jagal, and then it'll go to whatever the other waypoint is, Prune. And it's pretty straightforward. Let me erase that. I want that out of there. So anyway, I hope this. I know I went a little bit more than just talking about departures and SIDS, but at least I hope we covered what a departure is, what to look for. You know, pay attention to whether or not you are supposed to get vectored to your waypoints or not. And then, of course, on your arrival, you know, which transition to pick to get onto the arrival, and then which transition you're going to use to get off of the arrival and onto your approach, depending on what runway you are landing at. All right, so hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. All right, be good, be safe, don't crash.